Ever feel like, I don't know, almost like a runaway train is just plowing through your chest?
Oh, yeah.
Your heart's going crazy, breath is all over the place,
Mm.
and your hands are numb. Ugh! Panic attacks are the worst.
The worst.
And you know what's almost worse than that? Feeling like you're the only one going through it.
Totally.
But what if there's a way to, like, not just deal with it,
Yeah.
but actually, like, rewire how you react to panic altogether?
Well, the thing is, our bodies, they're kind of programmed for these intense reactions. It's like this ancient wiring meant to, keep us safe from, like, imagine a saber-toothed tiger?
Yeah, yeah.
But the thing is, these days, our tigers are more like,
Right.
deadlines.
Deadlines, exactly right.
That big presentation.
Not exactly life or death.
Not quite the same.
Okay, so our systems are a little behind the times.
A little bit.
This is where When Panic Happens by Dr. Charles Schaeffer comes in.
Yes.
He's got this really cool analogy, comparing your nervous system to a computer's operating system.
Yeah. I love that.
Too much going on. System crash. Hello, panic attack.
It's so true. And just like with a computer, there are ways to, troubleshoot our nervous systems.
Yeah.
Schaeffer, he breaks down this whole thing called the autonomic nervous system,
Okay.
which basically runs in the background, kind of like, stage crew for your body.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
regulating everything, breathing, digestion.
Next to the lights on.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, so we've got the operating system down.
Right.
But then Schaeffer introduces this concept of the Triforce. And as a bit of a gamer myself, I was like, tell me more.
He's talking about the 3 branches of what's called the vagal system,
Okay.
which is like a major player in how we respond to stress.
Okay, got it.
So picture this. You've got your dorsal vagal, which is all about the freeze response.
Like that deer in the headlights feeling.
Exactly. Then there's the sympathetic. That's your fight or flight culprit.
Oh, pumping the adrenaline.
Always on high alert. And finally, we have the ventral vagal. This one's our superpower.
Okay, superpower, you've got my attention.
This is the branch that helps us connect, feel empathy, stay balanced.
All of it.
Now, panic in this framework, it's basically getting stuck in that sympathetic, that fight or flight mode.
Okay, so it's like our nervous system is stuck on repeat.
Yeah.
Playing the same old, same old.
And the key is learning to engage the other branches,
Yeah.
especially that ventral vagal, to bring things back into balance.
So like a system reboot, but for our inner world.
Exactly.
But let's be real, in the middle of a panic attack, I'm not thinking engage ventral vagal stat.
Right.
So how do we even begin to tap into that?
Well, that's where Schaeffer gets really practical. He actually gives us tools and exercises to work with each part of the Triforce.
I love that.
So practical.
Because it's not about, never ever feeling panic.
Right.
It's more about having the skills to navigate it when it inevitably pops up. So less about becoming some panic-proof robot.
Right.
More about building a toolkit to handle whatever comes our way.
Exactly. And in the next part, we're going to dive into that toolkit.
Yes, let's do it.
Starting with something, and this might surprise you, your breath.
Okay.
It's like a window into your nervous system state. It tells you exactly what's going on beneath the surface.
Okay, so using our breath to, like, decode our panic, I'm into it, but also, kind of sounds too simple, no?
Yeah, it's funny how these ancient systems in our bodies, they're often way more straightforward than we realize.
Right.
Schaeffer, he breaks down a few different breath types, and each one, it's kind of linked to a different part of that vagal system we were talking about, our inner Triforce.
Okay, so it's like our breath is sending us, like coded messages about what's going on inside? Give me the cheat codes. How do I decode mine?
All right, so imagine a balanced breath.
Okay.
Nice and deep, full, like you're really savoring each inhale and exhale. That, my friend, that's your ventral vagal, your superpower signaling that it's online and good to go.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. When I think about those like rare moments of total chill, yeah, my breath is kind of like that deep and easy.
Exactly.
But what about when things are a bit off?
Well, that's where you might notice a disconnected breath. It's shallower, weaker, maybe even a bit strained.
Okay.
This could mean that your dorsal vagal, that freeze response, it's starting to take over, like your system's going offline to conserve energy.
So not quite full-on panic mode yet, but definitely a sign to, like, pay attention.
Exactly. And ignoring those signs, that's often how we end up in trouble later.
Ugh, yeah, been there.
Which brings us to, you guessed it, the anxious breath.
Oh, boy.
This one, it's rapid, shallow, practically screaming, "Get me out of here!"
It's a surefire sign that your sympathetic nervous system is pumping out the adrenaline.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well. The racing heartbeat is a dead giveaway. And then it becomes this awful cycle, right? Like the more aware I am of the panicky breathing, the more anxious I get.
Yeah.
That feedback loop, that's what we gotta break.
For sure.
And Schaeffer, he's got some, shall we say, unconventional tools for the job.
Okay, hit me.
Like this thing called the ice submerge technique.
Ice submerge.
Basically, you dunk your face in cold water.
You're kidding, right? When I read that, I was like, is this legit or totally bonkers?
Yeah.
But people are actually doing this.
Yeah.
With, like, actual results.
It's wild, right? But it's based on this thing called the mammalian diving reflex, which is this super ancient automatic response that happens when our faces go underwater.
Okay.
Your heart rate slows way down, blood flow gets redirected to the vital organs. It's like hitting the reset button on your whole system.
So we basically briefly turn into human submarines and poof.
Yeah.
Panic on.
Well, not magically gone.
Right.
But that reflex, it really does shift you out of fight or flight and more into conservation and calm.
Interesting.
It's like you're kind of tricking your nervous system into thinking you're in a completely different scenario, which disrupts that panic loop.
My mind is kind of blown right now. I had no idea my inner dolphin could be such a panic buster. Schaeffer mentions a patient, Rashida, who used this in the middle of a therapy session, right?
Oh, yeah. And it worked like a charm.
Wow.
She went from full-on panic to feeling grounded and calm in, like, seconds. Although I can only imagine her therapist's face when she, dumped her head in the water.
That's definitely memorable.
Yeah.
I might have to try that sometime, maybe with a little warning to anyone around.
Probably a good idea.
But I can see how forcing that physiological shift could be really powerful.
That's the beauty of it. It's accessible. You don't need a prescription or a therapist on speed dial. Just a sink, some cold water, and, well, a willingness to give it a shot.
See, this is why I love these deep dives. You think you've got panic somewhat figured out, and bam.
Yeah.
A sink full of cold water is your new secret weapon. Who knew?
Right. And speaking of shifting gears, Schaeffer also talks about creating what he calls a cool-down zone, which I think is so helpful, especially if you struggle with panic at night.
Oof, tell me about it. Those 2 a.m. heart racing, can't turn my brain off episodes are brutal. So how do we create this cool-down zone? Do I need, like, a meditation room?
It doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Okay, good.
It's more about having a dedicated space for your pre-sleep routine, and not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally.
Right.
If we bring all the stress of the day into bed with us, it's no wonder we can't sleep.
Makes sense. Our bedrooms should be like sanctuaries, not stress factories.
Exactly. So Schaeffer suggests, like, dimming the lights an hour or two before bed, avoiding screens, and doing calming activities.
Like Sarah and her lavender lotion. I loved that story. It shows you it doesn't need to be complicated.
Exactly. Sometimes the simplest things make the biggest difference. For Sarah, just swapping out her pre-sleep social media scroll for lavender lotion and a history podcast completely transformed her sleep.
It's like she retrained her brain to associate her bedroom with calm instead of like that wired anxiety.
Exactly. And the more we travel those pathways, the stronger they become.
Love that. So we've got our breath to guide us, ice water for emergencies, a cool down zone for pre-sleep jitters. But what about building that long-term resilience? It's not exactly practical to like carry a bucket of ice water everywhere I go.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got our emergency panic kit.
Right.
But what about like really building up that long-term panic resistance? So it's not a constant game of whack-a-mole,
It's about building what's called vagal tone.
Okay.
It's basically like the fitness level of your nervous system.
Interesting.
Just like you exercise your muscles, you can actually train your vagal system to handle stress way more effectively.
So the stronger our vagal tone, the less likely we are to get hijacked by panic.
Exactly.
Sign me up.
Right.
But how? How does, like, working up a sweat actually change how our brains react to panic?
It's really cool, actually. Schaeffer, he talks about high-intensity interval training, HII, as being super effective for this.
Okay.
It's almost like you're giving your nervous system a little controlled dose of panic. Your heart rate goes up, you're pushing your limits, but then you have those recovery periods built in.
So we're kind of like giving our bodies a sneak peek of what panic feels like.
Exactly.
But in a safe, manageable way.
Exactly. And what this does, it actually helps your system become less reactive to those same sensations when they happen in, like, real-life stressful situations.
Oh, that's so interesting.
It's like your body goes, okay, I've been here before.
Right.
I can handle this.
It's like exposure therapy, but for our nervous system.
Exactly.
And the more we do it, the less power those panicky feelings have over us.
Yes, it's about expanding your capacity to handle stress.
I love that.
And it's not just HIIT.
Yeah.
Even things like yoga, tai chi, or even just a brisk walk in nature,
Mm-hmm.
those have all been shown to increase vagal tone.
Okay, adding nature walks to my to-do list right now.
There you go.
It's amazing how these small, consistent things can make such a big difference in how we experience, like, everything.
Absolutely. And speaking of powerful tools that we often underestimate, Schaeffer also talks about mindfulness.
Okay, yeah.
And before you go thinking this is just some new age trend, this is a practice that's used by everyone from, like, elite athletes to, believe it or not, Navy SEALs.
Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
You're telling me those, like, tough-as-nails warriors use mindfulness to stay calm under pressure?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now I'm really interested.
They use it to stay focused, manage stress,
Mm-hmm.
and make really clear decisions even when the stakes are high.
Wow.
It's about training your attention to stay present, you know, instead of getting carried away by all those what-if disaster movies that our minds love to create.
So it's like mental strength training for whatever life throws at us.
Exactly.
I love it.
And Schaeffer actually highlights this woman named Lisa who used mindfulness to overcome really intense panic attacks that she was having after leaving the military.
Wow.
She went from feeling totally overwhelmed to actually rediscovering this sense of inner peace and control, which is incredible.
Proof that this stuff really works. It's like she retrained her mind to focus on what she could control instead of getting lost in like all the anxiety of the unknown.
Exactly. And the great thing is, mindfulness is a skill that literally anyone can learn.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Schaeffer even gives some exercises in the book like tactical breathing and water tank visualization, which sound kind of complicated, but they're actually super accessible and easy to work into your daily life.
So we're not just like stuck with these panicky thoughts. We can actually choose where our attention goes.
Yeah.
And by doing that, we can change how those thoughts make us feel.
It's powerful stuff.
That is incredibly empowering.
Right. And it all goes back to the fact that we can actually rewire our brains, you know?
Yeah, love that.
We've talked about exercise, we've talked about mindfulness,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's also the power of shifting our thought patterns, what Schaeffer calls cognitive restructuring.
Okay, cognitive restructuring sounds kind of intense.
It's not as complicated as it sounds.
Okay, good.
Think of it like Spider-Man's Spidey sense.
Okay.
It's basically about learning to recognize those early warning signs of panic.
Right.
You know, those thoughts that usually send you spiraling into a full-blown freak out.
Okay, so like those, this is it, I'm having a heart attack,
Yeah.
or I'm gonna faint right here in public.
Exactly.
Yeah, been there.
And what cognitive restructuring does is it helps us actually challenge those thoughts,
Right.
see how realistic they actually are, and then reframe them in a way that's more helpful.
So instead of just getting swept away by all that drama, we can hit pause and be like, okay, thought, I hear you, but let's look at the facts here.
Exactly. And often just that active questioning and reframing can really bring the intensity of the panic down.
Wow.
It's like you're taking away its power.
That makes so much sense. It's like we're building this multi-layered defense system.
I like that.
We've got exercise to boost our like baseline resilience.
Yeah.
We have mindfulness to train our attention, and then cognitive restructuring to like combat those sneaky little panic thoughts.
Exactly. It's like building a fortress of mental strength. And the coolest part, you can actually get stronger over time, just like with, you know, lifting weights or whatever.
I like that. So it's a practice. It's not like we're just stuck where we are.
Exactly. And to add to that fortress, we've also got the power of human connection, what Schaeffer calls co-regulation, as this reminder that we don't have to go through this alone.
So important because sometimes it feels so isolating.
It really does. But we're wired for connection.
Yeah.
And often just being around someone who's calm and supportive can actually do wonders for soothing our nervous systems.
I think having our own personal team of superheroes, right? Ready to swoop in when things get rough.
Love that analogy. And you know, this brings up a really important point. While all these tools we've been talking about are super powerful, sometimes we need a little extra support. Schaeffer really emphasizes that therapy can be super valuable for figuring out, you know, what strategies will work best for you and also addressing any underlying issues that might be contributing to the panic.
Yeah. It's about figuring out what works for you.
Totally.
Whether that's therapy, exercise, mindfulness, or Honestly, probably a combination of all of the above.
Right.
The most important thing is that you're taking action.
Yes. And remember, this book, When Panic Happens, it's a starting point.
Yeah.
Take what resonates with you, experiment, try things out.
Yeah, find what works.
Exactly.
Because you absolutely have the power to change your relationship with panic.
You are not broken.
You are not alone.
You've got this.
And you have everything you need to create a life where panic doesn't hold you back.
So true. This has been awesome. Until next time, remember, breathe, connect, and keep exploring all those inner resources.
You got this. Thanks for listening, everybody.